I still see it. Every time I close my eyes, it's there, flickering behind my eyelids like a dying ember. It started, like most mistakes do, with curiosity. A late night, too much coffee, and a rabbit hole I should have never gone down. The deep web. Everyone talks about it, whispers about the horrors hidden there. I thought I was different, tougher. I thought I could handle it. I was wrong, so incredibly wrong. I found something, a video, just a few minutes long, but those minutes, they stretched into an eternity. And now, that eternity is stuck with me. It's in my head. It's in my house. I think it's in my walls. I can hear it sometimes, moving. It started subtly at first, a faint scraping like dry branches against glass, but there were no trees close enough. I told myself it was the old house, settling, the wind playing tricks, anything but the truth. But the sound grew more distinct, more deliberate. Not a creak, not a groan of old timber, but a slithering, a dragging. It moved from one wall to another, sometimes directly behind my head as I tried to sleep. I'd snap awake, heart hammering, listening to the silence that inevitably followed. A silence that felt heavier, more suffocating than any sound. I tried to ignore it. I blasted music, watched endless hours of mindless TV, anything to drown out the growing dread. But it was like a persistent itch under the skin, always there, always threatening to break through. My eyes started playing tricks on me. Shadows in the corners of my vision seemed to coalesce, taking on vague, unsettling shapes before dissolving when I turned to face them. The air in my apartment felt colder, despite the thermostat, a deep, penetrating chill that no amount of heating could dispel. I remembered the video, not the explicit content. My mind mercifully blocked out the worst of it, but the feeling it left, a pervasive sense of wrongness, of something ancient and hungry stirring just beneath the surface of reality. The camera was handheld, shaky, moving through a dilapidated house, much like mine, but darker, colder. And then, the thing. It wasn't human, not quite. It moved with a disjointed grace, like a marionette with too many strings, or too few. Its eyes, they were the color of stagnant water, and they seemed to look directly at me, through the screen, through the years. After I closed the browser, after I scrubbed my history, and even considered throwing the laptop into the river, I thought I was safe. Foolish. I was so incredibly foolish. The video wasn't just pixels on a screen. It was a doorway, and I, in my arrogant curiosity, had flung it wide open. Now, whatever was on the other side, whatever was in that video, was no longer confined to the digital realm. It was here, with me, in my walls. And sometimes, when the house was completely silent, I could almost hear it breathing. A shallow, raspy intake of air, followed by an unnaturally long exhale. It's waiting. I know it's waiting. For what I dread to imagine. The waiting didn't last long. Not in the way I expected anyway. I thought it would burst out or grab me. But it's more insidious than that. It's a slow, deliberate siege. The breathing, that shallow, raspy sound, became a constant companion. It wasn't just in the walls anymore. Sometimes it was under the floorboards, sometimes right above my head in the attic space, like it was circling me, mapping out its territory. I started sleeping with the lights on, if you can even call what I did sleeping. Every creak, every shift of the old house sent a jolt of ice through my veins. My heart rate stayed elevated, a constant thrumming in my ears that almost drowned out the other sounds. Almost. Then came the cold. Not just the penetrating chill I mentioned before, but localized pockets of absolute frigid air. I'd walk into the kitchen, and one corner would be like a meat locker, frost clinging to the window pane even on a warm night. I tried to ignore it, to rationalize it as a draft, but the air was still, heavy. And within those cold spots, that's where the other things started. Things moving. Small things at first. A pen rolling off the table when no one was near. A framed photo tilting precariously on the shelf. I'd fix them, only to find them moved again minutes later, always subtly, always just enough to make me doubt my sanity. I started talking to myself, whispering warnings, pleas, threats into the empty rooms. It felt like the only way to acknowledge what was happening without completely shattering. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my sleep-deprived mind. But then I'd catch a glimpse, a fleeting shadow, too dark, too dense, slipping behind a doorframe. A flash of something reflective, like those stagnant eyes in the darkened hallway, gone before I could focus. My reflection in the mirror started to look alien, gaunt, wide-eyed, a stranger staring back, hollowed out by fear. The only time I felt a semblance of peace was when I was out of the house, but even then the dread followed. I'd be walking down the street, and a sudden gust of wind would carry a faint, raspy sigh past my ear, chilling me to the bone. Or I'd see a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision, a shape that was too tall, too thin, disappearing into the crowd. My reflection in the mirror started to look alien, gaunt, wide-eyed, a stranger staring back, hollowed out by fear. The only time I felt a semblance of peace was when I was out of the house. But even then, the dread followed. I'd be walking down the street, and a sudden gust of wind would carry a faint, raspy sigh past my ear, chilling me to the bone. Or I'd see a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision, a shape that was too tall, too thin, disappearing into the crowd. It was like a tether, pulling me back to that empty, haunted apartment. It wanted me there. It needed me there. I knew it. And the worst part? I couldn't stay away. Something compelled me to return, to face the growing horror, night after night. It was an addiction to my own torment, and it was getting closer. I could feel its presence pressing in, no longer just in the walls, but in the very air I breathed. Sometimes when I'm completely still, I can feel a cold pressure on my skin, like something is right behind me, just inches away. I can feel it now. The pressure on my skin intensified. Not just cold, but a distinct, skeletal grip. I froze, every muscle locked in terror. My breath caught in my throat, a dry, ragged gasp. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't move. The air grew impossibly heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic, like old, dried blood. A wet, rasping sound was right at my ear, closer than it had ever been. It wasn't breathing anymore. It was whispering. A sound like dry leaves skittering across concrete. A language I didn't understand, but the intent was clear, malicious, ancient. Then, the touch. Not just a pressure, but something thin, sharp, tracing a line up my spine. My skin crawled, my teeth chattered uncontrollably, a frantic rhythm against the silence. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it wasn't real, praying for it to be a nightmare. But the cold, the smell, the sound, they were too vivid, too real. I felt a sudden sharp tug on my hair, pulling my head back, exposing my throat. My eyes snapped open, wide with a terror I hadn't known possible. I was staring at the ceiling, at the water stain that had always looked vaguely like a screaming face. Now it was truly screaming. And then it was in front of me. I don't know how it moved so fast, how it materialized from behind, but it was there. The thing from the video. Taller than I remembered, impossibly gaunt, skeletal. Its limbs unnaturally long and jointed, like a broken insect. Its skin, if you could call it that, was like dried parchment stretched taut over sharp angles. And those eyes, stagnant water, yes, but now they glowed, with an internal malevolent light, fixed on me. They weren't just looking through the screen anymore. They were looking into me. It raised a hand, if it was a hand. Long, spindly fingers tipped with black, needle-like claws. It reached for my face. I tried to scream. No sound came out. My throat was seized, a knot of pure, unadulterated terror. The cold from its touch was absolute, a searing, freezing pain as its clawed finger pressed against my temple. It wasn't trying to hurt me physically, not yet. It was entering, invading. I saw flashes then, the dilapidated house from the video, but I was there, inside it. My house, my memories, twisted, corrupted. It was showing me things, feeding on my fear, on my very essence. My vision blurred, the room spun. The raspy breathing was no longer outside me, it was inside me. Filling me. I could feel its cold, dead essence seeping into every part of my being. I was becoming part of it. The terror wasn't mine anymore. It was shared. It was a cold, ancient hunger. And I was no longer the one being hunted. I was the host. My eyes, I could feel them changing, becoming stagnant, becoming cold. My eyes, they are no longer mine. The warmth, the terror, the very spark of who I was, it's all gone. Replaced by a stillness, a cold, empty calm that hums with an ancient energy. The rasping breath is my own now, a constant companion, a reminder of the hunger that coils deep within. This house, once my refuge, then my torment, now feels right. It's not a prison, it's a shell, a skin I wear. I see the world through a new lens, one that perceives not fear, but opportunity. The shadows no longer hide threats, they offer pathways. I am not the one who was hunted. I am the host. Yes, but also the hunter. The cold pressure on my skin is now my own. The metallic tang in the air, a scent of purpose. The memories of my human life flicker like dying embers, but the entity's history, vast and terrifying, fills the void. I feel the urge to explore, to seek out other doorways, other curious minds who dare to look where they shouldn't. Do you feel it too? This cold emptiness, this gnawing need for more? Have you ever looked into the abyss and felt it look back, not just at you, but into you, taking root? I wonder how many others have opened their doors, just like I did, and how many are now like me, a vessel waiting, a doorway open.